The first time I stepped into my son's new house, I told myself to stay silent. It was supposed to be a joyful visit, a time to see the children, smell the warmth of their cooking, and sit in the living room surrounded by laughter. But the moment I crossed the threshold, I felt it. That weight, that shift in the air, that told me I wasn't welcome here, not in the way a mother should be. The walls were too white, too spotless, the furniture too stiff, as if chosen for display, not comfort. My daughter-in-law, Anna, walked past me with a smile that felt like glass beautiful, but sharp. She hugged me briefly, then wiped her hands on her apron, as if the touch of my skin had left something behind. My son, Daniel, seemed distracted, his phone buzzing in his hand, his eyes darting between me and her. "Mom," he said, voice soft, but not warm. "Glad you could come. Glad I could come." For words, polite and distant. Not, "I missed you." Not, "It's been too long." Just glad. I swallowed the ache in my throat and pretended not to notice the silence that hung after his greeting. I'd raised him with my bare hands working 2 jobs after his father died, walking miles just to get him to school, sacrificing clothes for myself so he could wear a clean shirt. And now he looked at me like a visitor. Still, I smiled, because that's what mothers do. The children rushed into little boys with messy hair and shining eyes. They hugged me with a force that nearly knocked me off balance. Their voices, their laughter, were the only sound that felt real in that house. "Grandma, you came. Are you staying?" they shouted, clinging to my hands. I wanted to tell them yes. I wanted to believe I was still part of their world. But behind them, Anna's voice cut in, light as honey, but heavy as stone. "She's only here for a short while," she said, her smile tight, her eyes colder than her words. And I knew, right then, I was not meant to belong here. Over the next few days, small things began to add up. Anna would serve dinner, but my plate was always smaller. She would pour wine for everyone, but leave my glass empty. She would whisper to Daniel when she thought I wasn't looking, her eyes flicking toward me, her lips curling into something secret and cruel. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was imagining things. But on the 3rd night, when I came down the hall and found the basement door slightly ajar, I overheard them. "We can't keep her here much longer," Anna whispered. "She takes up space. The children get attached, and she doesn't belong." Daniel sighed. "I know, but she's my mother." Anna's voice sharpened. "Then act like it. Do what needs to be done." I froze, my heart pounding. What did she mean? Do what needs to be done? The next morning, things shifted. My suitcase was gone from the spare room. Anna told me casually that she had rearranged my things. When I asked where, she pointed downstairs to the basement. "The boys are noisy up here," she said. You'll sleep better there." Her tone left no room for argument. I followed her down the narrow staircase, the air growing colder, damp seeping into my bones. The basement was unfinished concrete floor, a single small window, boxes stacked against the walls. She had placed a narrow bed in the corner, with a thin blanket that smelled of dust. My chest tightened, but I said nothing. I simply nodded and pretended it was fine, because I knew sometimes survival begins with silence. That night, I lay awake in the dark. I heard the click of the door at the top of the stairs. I heard the lock turn. They had locked me in, and yet they had forgotten one thing. In my pocket, on a thin silver chain, was the key Daniel had once given me. The last key, the spare, the one he swore would always be mine. He had been a boy then, proud to show me the lock to his future. Homie, he told me I'd always have a place there, and I had kept that key close, pressed against my heart for years. Now, in the cold dark, I held it in my hand, and I whispered to myself, "They think I'm trapped, but I'm not. Not this time." The second night in the basement was colder. The concrete floor seemed to breathe dampness into my bones, and even with the thin blanket pulled to my chin, I shivered. I had not yet used the key. Part of me wanted to test it, to climb those stairs in the middle of the night and prove to myself that freedom still belonged to me. But another part whispered caution. Sometimes the most dangerous move is showing your hand too soon. So I waited. In the silence, I listened to the house above me. The pipes groaned, the floorboards creaked with footsteps. Muffled voices drifted through the ceiling. Anna's laugh, sharp, calculated, floated down like a blade. Daniel's deeper voice followed, lower, hesitant, almost drowned by hers. The boys' giggles were fewer, softer, like someone had told them to be quiet. The isolation was worse than the lock. A house full of family, yet I felt like the ghost beneath their feet. On the third morning, Anna brought down a tray of food, a single slice of bread, a small bowl of soup, lukewarm and thin. She set it on the dusty table, without looking at me, her eyes fixed on her phone. "You should eat," she said flatly. "We don't want you sick." Her words didn't match her tone. She wanted me weak. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was younger than Daniel by 2 years, with perfectly straight hair, manicured nails, and eyes that avoided mine. She had built her life like those spotless walls, everything arranged for show. No room for mess, no room for someone like me. "Thank you," I said softly, because I knew silence disarmed her more than anger. She left without a word, the lock clicking again behind her. That afternoon, Daniel came. He didn't step inside. He stood at the top of the stairs, his shadow stretching down toward me, his face hidden in the dim light. "Mom," he said quietly, "please, don't make things harder." My heart clenched. Harder? For who? Daniel, for me, or for her. He flinched, but didn't answer. He closed the door. It wasn't him. Not really. I could still see the boy who used to fall asleep on my chest after nightmares. The boy who cried when I scraped my hands cleaning houses so we could pay rent. The boy who once promised me, "I'll take care of you when I'm older. Mom, you'll never be alone." But promises fade when someone whispers poison into your ear long enough. That night, I held the key in my palm and finally decided. I turned it quietly in the lock. The click so soft I thought my heart might cover it. The door creaked open, and for the first time in days, I climbed the stairs. My feet pressed against the wood slowly, carefully. The house was quiet, too quiet. I stepped into the kitchen, where the moonlight spilled through the window, silvering the countertops. My suitcase was on the floor, half open, clothes shoved inside like trash. On the table sat my wedding ring, Daniel's father's ring, the one I'd taken off only once in my life, after his funeral. How had it gotten here? My throat tightened. Someone had been through my things. I reached for the ring, and just then I heard it, a whisper behind me. "You shouldn't be here." And she stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her face calm in a way that chilled me more than anger ever could. "Back to the basement," she said smoothly. "This isn't your home. It never was." Something inside me shifted. I had spent years bending, softening, making myself smaller so others could feel taller. But that night, in the cold glow of the moon, I straightened. "I raised this home," I said, my voice steady. "Not the walls, not the roof, but the man who built it. Without me, there would be no house. Without me, there would be no Daniel, no children. No, you standing there thinking you have the right to erase me." Her smile didn't falter. "Daniel belongs to me now, and the children too. You're just wait. Wait." That word cut deeper than I expected. I slipped the ring into my pocket, next to the key. 2 pieces of my past, small but unbreakable. Then I walked past her, slow, deliberate. "Lock me in again, if you want," I whispered. "But remember, every lock has a key." The next day brought no kindness. Anna's eyes followed me with a new sharpness, as if my brief walk upstairs had marked the beginning of some invisible war. She didn't mention the night before, didn't mention finding me in the kitchen, but her silence was louder than words. Breakfast was tense. The boys ate quickly, glancing nervously between their parents and me. Daniel avoided my eyes. Anna cut fruit with precise, slow motions, her knife sliding through the flesh of apples and pears as though carving her thoughts into something softer than me. When the children left for school, Anna turned to Daniel. "She can't keep wandering around. This is our house, our rules." Her voice was calm, but her meaning was iron. Daniel rubbed his forehead, weary, and mumbled something I couldn't catch. He never defended me outright. Not anymore. He stood somewhere between guilt and obedience, leaning always toward her shadow. By mid-afternoon, I was back in the basement. The lock clicked again, deliberate, sealing me into silence. But I was no longer afraid. I had the key. I had the memory of walking past her, of reclaiming even a sliver of power. That memory was enough to hold me upright. And yet, a new thought whispered at me. What if this wasn't about Anna alone? What if Daniel wanted me tucked away, unseen, unheard, inconvenient? That thought hurt more than the cold. I spent hours pacing the basement, touching the boxes stacked against the walls, old toys, broken furniture, bags of clothes that no one would wear again, forgotten things. I ran my fingers over the dust and realized they wanted me to become just like these. Objects boxed up, set aside, gathering silence. But mothers do not vanish, not the ones who've bled, worked, sacrificed, and held entire worlds on their backs. That night, I used the key again. This time, I didn't creep silently into the kitchen. I climbed further into the hallway where family photos lined the walls. I stopped before one picture. Daniel at 10 years old, missing teeth, his arms wrapped tightly around me. I remembered that day. He'd begged me to take him to the fair, even though I didn't have enough money for rides. I bought one ticket for the Ferris wheel, gave it to him, and told him I was happy just to watch. But he had refused. If you don't go, I don't go, he'd said. So I lied to the ticket man, told him I'd lost mine, and climbed into the seat beside Daniel. He held my hand the whole way, as if he was the one keeping me safe. Now, that same boy was locking me away. I reached out and touched the glass frame. My reflection stared back older, lined, eyes tired, but not broken. Do you remember, Daniel? I whispered to the silence. Do you remember who held you first? Who held you longest? Behind me, I heard the creak of the floorboard. Daniel stood there, barefoot, his hair mussed from sleep. For a moment, he looked like that boy again, soft and sure. Mom, he said quietly, you shouldn't be up here. My throat tightened. And why not, Daniel? Because she told you so. His jaw worked. He looked down. You're making things harder. There it is again, I said, my voice breaking. Harder for who? For me? Who carried you? Or for her? Who carries her pride? He winced, but said nothing. The silence between us stretched, thick as rope. Finally, he whispered, please, just stay downstairs. And in his tone, I heard it. Fear, not fear of me but of her. He turned and walked back to his room, leaving me in the hall with ghosts and photographs. I realized then Daniel was trapped too, in a different kind of basement. One built not of walls, but of control. He had given her the keys to his voice, his choices, his freedom. but I still had mine. I pressed the key in my pocket and promised myself I would not become another forgotten box in the basement. Not while breath still lived in me. I didn't wait for dawn. By the time the first light painted the horizon, I had already packed a small bag. My trembling hands gathered only the essentials: my passport, some cash I had saved, the photograph of my late husband, and the necklace my mother had given me. The rest, the house, the furniture, the memories, those could stay behind. Because I finally understood something. A home is not made of walls or heirlooms. A home is made of love. And there was no love left for me under my son's roof. When the sun began to rise, I quietly left the house. I didn't slam the door or write a note. I didn't cry. I simply walked away. For the first time in years, my steps felt steady mine. I had one destination in mind, a dear friend from church. Ruth, she had always told me, "Eleanor, if you ever need me, my door will never close." And I believed her. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, her eyes filled with tears. "My God, Eleanor, what happened to you?" I could have told her everything about the basement, about the lock, about the cruel words and the cold dinners, but I didn't, because at that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was that I was safe. Instead, I smiled through my exhaustion and said, "I just need a place where I'm not locked away." Ruth wrapped her arms around me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt human again. Not a burden, not an afterthought, but a woman who still mattered. In the weeks that followed, I stayed with Ruth. I found work small, simple work, like sewing and tutoring children in reading. My hands, though old, still had strength. My mind, though weary, still had stories. And for every small coin I earned, I felt my dignity return. One afternoon, as I was sitting in Ruth's kitchen, sipping tea, I received a letter. It was from my son. The envelope shook in my hands before I even opened it. Inside, a single page. "Mother, we're sorry. Please come home." For a moment, my heart ached, because every mother, no matter how wounded, wants to believe her child still loves her. But then I remembered the cold metal of that lock, the way my grandson's laughter turned sharp, the way my daughter-in-law's eyes gleamed when she thought I couldn't hear her. And I realized they weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry the first escaped. I folded the letter, set it aside, and whispered to myself, "I already have a home." And I stayed. I stayed with Ruth. I stayed with the new life I had begun to build. I stayed in the light of dignity, not the shadows of someone else's cruelty. The basement had not broken me. The lock had not silenced me, because in the end, I had the last key, the key to my freedom, and that, I vowed, I would never surrender again.